அது என்னத்துக்கு நாமளே தனியா பண்ணலாம். பண்றதுன்னா நானே தனியா பண்றேன். ஏன் நான் ஒருத்தங்கிட்ட நான் போயிட்டு சொல்லி பண்ணலாம்?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a request to make. If I normally set the setting on mute on entry. Okay, so if anybody is entering the session. Okay, so I'll start now, and I have 60 participants at the moment, but I'll share the attendance sheet after I have more than 100 people. Then it will be better so that everyone gets it. Okay. Many people were able to execute the program that I was saying that I will not execute, and they were able to get the set of parameters which is giving you the best accuracy. I think that's a good sign that, and that also tells me that my program is running. But that's a good sign, and this way you can always find your best set of parameters. But I have one thing to say: if the model is bigger, model gets bigger, and you have a big thing at hand, so probably at that point of time, it will be very tough to find out set of best set of hyperparameter. If you have access to a very high computational resource, then you can run it and see these programs. Okay, that I have shared in the folder. Uh, I think I have not shared this one. Okay. Now I have shared another folder called class 5, and in this folder there are some files, the some of the Python programs, and then class 5 IPyNB, and then a sonar.csv dataset. So these files are there. I'll be using that in the class 5 lecture. Okay. In this example, I'll be dealing with classification of flower species, the iris dataset, which is also called as the Hello World program of machine learning. Uh, Machine learning, when you start to learn machine learning, first example that we all do is iris flower classification. Okay, iris flower dataset classification. So in this program, we'll learn how to load data from CSV that we have already seen, how to prepare multi-class classification data for modeling with neural networks, and we'll also see how to evaluate Keras neural network models with scikit-learn library. Okay. See, one question you could ask that, and this was the confusion earlier in the program 4 also, what is the use of Keras classifier or Keras regressor functions when we have already seen how to do it? Yes, that is true, but the thing is, things are becoming so complicated, and things are actually so complicated that you need to learn different technologies as well. It's not like only one package or one technology, learning one language is enough for you to make you understand how you can program, how you can perform machine learning, how you can do machine learning research. So you need to have, you need to be aware of so many different things that it sometimes it becomes very confusing, and it frustrates us also. But that is why we try to show and we try to expose our students to different technologies, different platforms, different languages, different packages, so that wherever you see this package, wherever you suppose you are importing some program, and that program is using scikit-learn library or probably Keras regressor or classifier library, then you should be aware about them. Okay, it should not happen that, okay, I don't know what it is and how I'll be able to deal with it, although that was very simple, and what you are doing manually, this function is doing for you in succinct way or in more mature way. I have shared DL class 5. Okay, so you should, if you refresh your Google Drive, you'll be able to see it. I have shared it over here. You see this. In collab codes, I have shared class 5. Right. So Iris flower classification dataset. In this tutorial, we'll use the standard machine learning problem called the Iris overs dataset. Okay. The dataset is well studied and is a good problem for practicing on neural networks because all of the 4 input variables are numeric and have the same scale in centimeter. Each instance describes the properties of an observed over measurement, and the output variable is specific iris species. The attribute for this dataset can be summarized as sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width in centimeter, and then finally the class label. This is a multi-class classification problem, meaning that there are more than 2 classes to be predicted, and in fact there are 3 over species. This is an important type of problem on which to practice with neural network because the 3 class values require specialized handling. Now we import all the classes. We import NumPy, we import read CSV from pandas, we import sequential to create our model, we import dense to create our layers, we import Keras classifier to create the wrappers of scikit-learn. Then we and plot model. Then from model selection, we import cross-val score, k-fold label encoder from the pre-processing scikit-learn pre-processing library, and then we import the pipeline for scikit-learn pipeline. And we will see what are the uses of these classes and libraries that we have imported. So first I connect it, and then we see initialize random number generator. Seed is something that I have been doing till now. All the time I am doing it. NumPy. Okay, I did not run it. I need to load the data. My drive is mounted. I need to load the data. I'll load it. Five. Yeah, it is in 4. Okay. So I've loaded the data. Data set is divided, and this is read into a data frame. Read CSV function gives you returns a data frame to you. Okay. So data frame values can be stored in the data set data frame. So now this data set contains all the values, okay, of the CSV file that has been read. We convert it into float value. We convert it as data set from all the rows of 0 to 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. These columns, 4 columns, into a float data type. And then the label, class label, is given into the Y from the data set. Okay. Now we encode the output variable. See, output variable contains 3 different string values. Okay, when modeling multi-class classification problems using neural network, it is good practice to reshape the output attribute from a vector that contains values for each class value to be a matrix with a boolean value for each class value and whether or not a given instance has that class value or not. This is called one-hot encoding or creating dummy variables from a categorical variable. For example, in this problem, the 3 class values are iris setosa, iris versicolor, and iris virginica. If we had the 3 observations like iris setosa, iris versicolor, and iris virginica, we convert it into a one-hot encoding binary matrix for each data instance that would look like this. So you see, this is how we encode the categorical classes into one hot encoding, in which I have, as with respect to 3 classes, I have 3 vectors, and in the first vector the values are 1 0 0, 1 indicating presence of iris setosa, and 00 indicating absence of iris versicolor and iris virginica. The second vector is 010, which says absence of iris setosa and presence of iris versicolor and absence of iris virginica. Similarly, the third column also says that iris setosa and versicolor are absent, iris virginica is present. So this is called one hot encoding. Only one value in this vector will be 1, rest of them will be 0, and that is what we say one value is hot, remaining are cold. We can do this by first encoding the strings consistently to integers using scikit-learn class label encoder, and then we convert the vector of integers to a one hot encoding using the keras function to categorical. Okay, and that is what we are doing over here. So what we have done, we have encoded using the label encoder function of scikit-learn. We have encoded all the values. So encoder equal to label encoder. So we are doing encoding class values as integers. So class values, which were the class values iris setosa, versicolor, and virginica, they have been converted to integers. And then encoder dot fit y, we will convert all the y values. Y means we have y is our label column. So we encode all those as integer, and then encode y is equal to encoder dot transform y, right? So we now we convert integers to dummy variable, that is one hot encoding, and this is how to categorical we encode the encoded y into dummy y, which is our one hot encoding. Okay, so these are just the steps. If you run these steps one by one, also you will be able to see the result. This will work only with CSV file. Yes, it will work with CSV. I'll load CSV. This the function read CSV function that I have from the pandas. I have imported pandas library. Pandas library has this read CSV. It will return a data frame. Pandas have data frame. So you see, you might not be aware with pandas, but panda is a library which is very much useful when we are dealing with data in machine learning. So we do this to encode all the labels as one hot vector. Now our labels are defined, the categorical labels are defined. Not directly on images. No, it will not work on images. Now define the neural network model. We have our model, we create a baseline. Okay, when we create a baseline means baseline is the most simple that you can think of, and we create a baseline, then we try to modify our model and try to tune model so that we get better and better model. So in this we create a normal shallow network. I wouldn't even call it a deep network. We have our model, we call it baseline model. Model equal to sequential. We add the first layer with 8 input, input dimension 4, activation ReLU. We then add second layer. We don't need to specify our input dimension over here. Okay. Activation equal to ReLU, and then we create the third layer, which is an output layer, and it has 3 values. Okay, you see, can we use its feature stored in CSV and that we can import here? Will that be okay? Yes, that will be okay. Right. Okay. So model.add, we have the third layer, output layer. Since we have 3 classes, we have 3 nodes over here. Now we compile our model, and the loss is specified as categorical cross entropy. Remember, till now we have been using binary cross entropy because we had binary class classification. Now we will use categorical cross entropy because we are doing many class classification, and these are categories, okay, which we have to identify. The optimizer is again taken as Adam, metric is accuracy, and then what you can do, you can plot the model and return the model. Okay, so let me run some of them. So what has happened, I will run this code. This cell has executed, it has converted to one hot, and I'll then run this code. It will return the model. The plotting is not happening over here. It will happen when the model is actually, this function is actually called. We can now create our keras classifier like the estimator we have done in previous one. To use in scikit-learn, we can also pass arguments in the construction of keras classifier class that will be passed on to function internally used to train the neural network. Here we pass number of epochs as 200 and batch size as 50 to use when training the model. You remember in the fit function, we used to specify the epochs and batch size. That you can do here as well in the Keras classifier function itself. So Keras classifier function is a good wrapper function which will take care of all these explanations, all these arguments for you. So our estimator is our Keras classifier. Keras classifier function gives you an estimator. Keras classifier, what it does for you, it takes this function baseline model which you have created here. Okay, so eventually it is, so it is what all it is doing, Keras classifier function, it is creating a function for you. This is the function. Then it is specifying number of epochs, then batches, and then it is also telling whether verbose could, you need verbose to be 0 or 1. You need the training to be verbal or not. Now we evaluate the model with k-fold cross validation. Now we can evaluate our model estimator on our data set X and dummy Y using k-fold cross validation. Evaluate the model only takes approximately 10 seconds and returns an object that describes the evaluation of 10 constructed models for each of the splits of the data. You see this point. I would like to annotate this point which says evaluation of 10 constructed models. Try to understand that every fold of X fold cross validation, K fold cross validation gives you a new model. Okay. It does not utilize the previously created or some other folds model, because in that case it will be a retraining. Number of epochs will be increasing. You will not be starting afresh. So there are 10 constructed models. So k fold equal to k fold, n splits equal to 10, shuffle true, random state equal to seed. Evaluate our model estimator on our dataset X and dummy Y using 10-fold cross validation. Result is cross valid score. Estimate, we pass the estimator X and dummy Y, K CV equal to K fold. And if it runs, okay, I did not run this. Okay, in the meantime, it is taking some time to run. I will chat. I'll just message the forms for all of you to fill the attendance form. All these links are open and they are collecting responses. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, and 11. If I would suggest that you fill all the forms. Okay. Unfortunately, Dr. Rajmani, it is your slow speed because of which it is not able to do it. You can see in the meantime, you can see what I'm doing, and then you can run it in your own time. Error during loading of data. It's error. It could be error because you might not be giving the correct path to that file. So if you give the correct path over here, it will tell load it. There should not be any problem, because see, I'm running this code in front of you and I've shared the same code. So there should not be any problem. Okay. So after running this code, it gave me an accuracy of 97.33%. This is a very small example to show that how we can perform multi-class classification as well. Error at k-fold cross validation. This is The data, okay, there is a question from Rajamari sir. Which data I need to copy in read CSV? Sir, the data that is associated with this program only. You try to see that folder. That folder has a data file in it. Okay. You see, I have this data set, iris.csv. When you go to this class, DL classes class 4, you will find the iris.csv file there itself. Okay. Like we have been doing till now. You don't have to look anywhere else. Okay. So after completion of this, it has given me an accuracy of 97. Accuracy is NAN. Run it again. There must be some error in the data that you are uploading. 9% should not give. There is some error in the data. Have you run all the things over from top to bottom? You should see that there are numbers. Okay, there are numbers on these square brackets. Only then you understand that you have run the code. So you should run all the code in sequential order, then only you will come to get this result. It should not give nan, not a number. All are running. Okay, probably I can discuss that separately. And might, okay. So this is a very small example. Now we can evaluate our model estimator on our data set X and dummy Y using a 10-fold cross-validation procedure. Evaluating the model only takes approximately 10 seconds. Returns an object that describes the evaluation of 10 constructed models for each of the splits of data set. And now this is accuracy, an average accuracy with, you see, this is a standard deviation. The mean of all the 10 models, 97.3, with the standard deviation 4.42. This is not good, but ultimately if you get a mean that reflects or that gives you an idea how good your model will be while testing. Now if your training model gives you very good accuracy, like 97% is a good accuracy, not for iris dataset, because iris dataset, for iris dataset people have obtained 99.999% accuracy. In fact, 100% accuracy is also obtained on iris dataset. But you see, 97 is also relatively, we say 90 is good. So and the standard deviation is 4.4. So if your validation accuracy is very good, CV accuracy is very good, but your testing accuracy is not good, that means your model is overfitting, like Tiwari sir had discussed. Your overfitting is an indication, it's an indication of overfitting when your training is very good, giving very good result, while testing is not giving. So what we have done till now, we have is there any need to pre-process the data? Not at this time. This is we already pre-processed standard data. So what we have learned how to load data and make it available to Keras, how to prepare multi-class classification data for modeling using one-hot encoding, how to use Keras neural network models with scikit-learn, how to define a neural network using Keras for multi-class classification, how to evaluate a Keras neural network and model using scikit-learn with k-fold cross-validation. So this is all what we have seen in this program. Now I'll move on to 5 DL
Sir,
class 5.
sir, in this case we have, sir, I have a doubt that in this
Yes,
case we
please.
have three output variables. As we can see in this case we have three output variables.
What are those three output variables?
Iris tosa, iris
Those
versicolor,
are
and iris
labels.
vertica.
Okay. Those are the labels. Output variables
These are the
means,
labels
see,
of our columns.
Nonsense.
yeah, they are columns, but we convert it to column. It is like the data set, every
Sir,
sample
sir,
has a class label. Either it is iris setosa or iris versicolor or iris virginica. This is called class label. If it is class label, our objective is to identify which class that given sample belongs to. Okay. So what we are doing over here, since it is categorical, these names are strings, and in TensorFlow we don't use strings. So our job is to convert it to a numeric format. Okay. So to convert it to numeric format, we use one hot encoding. So what we have done, we have three classes. So for every class, we will create one column vector. Okay, one column vector, 100 for first class, 010 for second class, and 001 for third class. Okay. So what will happen when you train it? You understand what is supervised learning, right? Gaganpreet ma'am. Okay, so I hope you understand what is supervised learning. Supervised learning says that you feed the sample, you feed the input and give it a target. So target is, if the class label of the sample is 100, then that will be presented as the output. So output, my output has 3 nodes. You see, output layer has got 3 nodes in it. So if the sample is iris setosa, then 100, the 3 nodes are supposed to produce three probability values with the softmax, and these 3 variables will this vector will have a value of 100. Okay, it means the first one should be 1, remaining should be 0. If the class label is iris versicolor, then 3 nodes will have a value similar to this 0, 1, 0. And if the class label is iris virginica, the 3 output nodes will have values 0, 0, 1. Right. So as I had told you previously also, when we are using softmax, the sum of all probabilities. So probability value produced at this node, probability value produced at second node. So probability value produced at this node, and this node, all 3 nodes should add up to 1. That is the attribute of softmax function. And you will notice that I'm using softmax function. Right. I'm not able to move
Thank
this.
you,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Thanks. So this is how you perform the multi-class classification. Now I'll move on to DL class 5. So I would request everyone to open DL class 5 program. And it is also very small, and I'll just rush through this to show how we can create a baseline model to start our machine learning program. Okay, I mean, you should have a baseline model to test. Baseline models are normally the simplest of models which will produce an accuracy value. And your job will be to tune the hyperparameters, tune your model such that you get better and better and better accuracy. So I will tell you how to get the baseline and what different types of baselines are there. So how to load training data and make it available to Keras, how to design and train a neural network for tabular data, how to evaluate performance of a neural network model in Keras on unseen data, how to perform data preparation to improve skill when using neural network, and how to tune the topology and configuration of neural network in the Keras. These things we will see. Now, this is baseline neural network model performance. Now, this is something that I have copied from Stack Overflow website, and there was some answer on how to create a baseline. So I found it very detailed one, and this I would just read through. A baseline is a method that uses heuristics, simple summary statistics or randomness or machine learning to create predictions for a data set. You can use these predictions to measure the baseline performance or accuracy. This metric will then become what you compare any other machine learning algorithm against. Am I not audible?
You are audible.
Okay, I think Dr. Satyaji, there is some problem with your speaker, because I think every time you have this problem, right? Okay, sir. So I'll continue. In more detail, a machine learning algorithm tries to learn a function that models the relationship between input data and the target variable. Input data means feature and the target variable means label. Like in the previous example, iris setosa, iris versicolor, virginica were the labels. So when you test it, you will typically measure performance in one way or another. For example, your algorithm may be 75% accurate, but what does this mean? You can infer this meaning by comparing with the baseline performance. Okay, like I had a question that I got this question yesterday or probably day before yesterday when I was in the lab session, that how much accuracy is good, minimum accuracy, how minimum accuracy is good. Now this is the answer to that question, that create a baseline and get an accuracy. Okay, so for your problem, for your domain, create a baseline model, get the accuracy, and that accuracy is the minimum accuracy that you can obtain. So your job should be, when you're doing a machine learning research, your job should be to get better and better and better accuracy than the baseline model. So minimum would be the accuracy obtained by baseline model. Typical baseline lines include those supported by scikit-learn's dummy estimators. Okay. Now, classification baseline in this, you see there are different baselines that are generated in the set in the case you have classification example like stratified. It generates predictions by respecting the training set's class distribution. You remember the stratified, I had told you that it will try to have equal percentage of all the class labels in any training set. Okay, when we create the validation and test split using a stratified function, it will try to create try to have equal percentage of all the classes in every split. Most frequent always predicts the most frequent label in the training set. Prior will always predict the class that maximizes the class prior. Uniform generates predictions uniformly at random. Constant always predicts a constant label that is provided by the user. So these are different type of dummy scikit-learn estimators. Regression baselines in median always predict the median of the training set. Quartile always predicts a specific quantile of the training set provided with the quantile parameter. Constant always predicts a constant value that is provided by the user. Now, in general, you will want your approach to outperform the baseline you have selected. In the example above, you would want your 75% accuracy to be higher than any baseline you have run on the same data. And finally, if you are dealing with a specific domain of machine learning, such as recommender system, then you will typically pick baselines that are current state of the art approaches. Now, state of the art, you will come to know state of the art only when you read papers. Okay, latest recent journal papers, conference papers also. Since you will usually want to demonstrate that your approach does better than this. For example, while you evaluate your new collaborative filtering algorithm, you may want to compare it to matrix factorization, which itself is a learning algorithm, but is now a popular baseline since it has become so successful in recommender system research. Okay. Okay, so after reading this, I have just copied it from the Stack Overflow Stack Overflow website, and you can also find it. I found this explanation very good, very useful, so I just copied for the sake of understanding. You have this, you can read it again and understand. Okay, now I'm going to work on Sonar dataset, and this dataset is also available in the folder. Okay, in the folder, your Google Drive, in this class 5 folder. Dataset we'll use in this tutorial, Sonar dataset. This is dataset that describes Sonar chirp returns bouncing off different surfaces. The 60 input variable are the strength of the returns at different angles. It is a binary classification problem that requires a model to differentiate between rocks and metal cylinders. Okay. One second. It's a well-documented, understood data. All of the variables are continuous and generally in the range of 0 to 1. The output variable is a string M of mine and R for rock. Okay. which will need to be converted to integers 1 and 0. The dataset containing dataset contains 208 observation, 208 observation. Benefit of using this dataset is that it is a standard benchmark problem. This means that we have some idea of the expected skill of a good model. So this any model you create, this will have a baseline. You will be able to compare your result with the already shown results in the paper, the results that have been shown in the paper. So let's create a baseline model and result for this problem. We'll start off by importing all of the classes and function we'll need. So we have done that. Okay, I will run it. My drive is already mounted. Now I'm going to load the data set. Now you see I have loaded the dataset. However, dataset using the read CSV function of the pandas library, read CSV returns a data frame. Data frame values are taken into dataset and it is split into um, features and Mr. Ansari is saying net connect is slow. Please consider, sir. If I will consider this, I think I'm going to miss so many things because I have to move on to CNN now. Okay, I'm rushing through because so many things I have already completed and the code is with you and I have given enough explanation in every cell. Before every code I have given enough explanation, so if you just read through you will come to understand what is happening in that cell. Okay, and most of the things are pretty obvious and already done many times, so I think I'll have to rush through. Okay, the output variable are string values. You see the data set is divided into two parts, the features 0 to 59. All the columns 0 to 59 columns are taken into as features and we convert that into float value. Then the last column is taken as the class column y. Output variable is a string variable because I think it is m and mine and rock. Okay, m for mine and r for rock, so it will be either m or r. So we need to convert it. To convert, we have used the same code that we did previously in the previous one, encoder equal to label encoder, then we encoder fit and encoder y equal to encoder dot transform. So I run this code. Okay, and it is encoded y. So just to demonstrate what it looks like, the encoded y looks like this. There are these many values as 1 and so they have been encoded. Which one is 1, which one is 0, I don't know. I'll have to check match with the feature, but ultimately who cares. Okay, we are now ready to create a neural network using Keras. We are going to use scikit-learn to evaluate the model using stratified k-fold cross validation, and these things are already given. To use Keras model with scikit-learn, we must use Keras classifier wrapper. This class, so I'm all the time giving you this Keras classifier, and this way I'm also emphasizing upon when I do load data, I'm getting errors as file not found. Sir, if file is not found, that is the problem. You are not able to browse through. Okay, if your Google Drive is mounted, browse through, give it the correct path. You see, I have this path is my Google Drive's path, the path that is written over here. You will have to replace this to your path. Okay, my uh, computer's path cannot be your computer's path. You'll have to change it. Okay, so to use Keras model with scikit-learn, we must use Keras classifier wrapper. This class takes a function that creates and returns our neural network model. So this class itself is complete thing. You don't have to look anywhere else. It also takes argument that will pass along to the call to fit such that number of epochs and batch sizes. Dr. Rajamani, which procedure you want me to repeat, sir? Okay, sir. I'll talk to you. No, load data procedure. I have already, in fact, I am at the fifth program. I have already discussed it times earlier. I will talk to you separately, sir. At this point, I cannot spend any more time on loading data. Okay, I have done it 4 times already. So you see, so. Let's start off by defining the function that create our baseline model. Our model will have a single fully connected hidden layer with the same number of neurons as input variables. This is a good default starting point when creating neural network on no problem. Hmm.
उसको फिर और पकड़ लिया और होता देखे हेलो बाय गुड मॉर्निंग ठीक है ज्यादा उसको बोल पापा रहे बताएंगे
Please mute yourself. Okay. Now, in this initialization, the weights are, as I'm reading through this line, please concentrate. Weights are initialized using a small Gaussian random number. The rectifier activation function is used. The output layer contains a single neuron in order to make a prediction, because this is a binary classification. So it uses either 1 or 0. So I will be, our network will be happy with 1 neuron only. It uses sigmoid activation function in order to produce a probability output in the range 0 to 1 that can easily and automatically be converted to crisp class values. This all we have already seen. Again, I'm going to use binary cross entropy. You remember we had used in the previous one, Iris Satosa, the Iris classification, we had used the categorical cross entropy because there were categories. Okay, now we have binary values, so we will be using binary cross entropy. Rest of the things we all know we have been doing. Just I have created a function called create baseline, and in this function I have created a model sequential that I've been doing till now. Now the dense layer has 60 neurons, you see, because an input dimension is 60. So this I have matched with the number of input values. So input is 60, dense layer has 60 neurons. Kernel initializer is normal, which is initializing all the edge weights with random probability distribution, normal Gaussian probability distribution. Okay, and activation function is ReLU. Then it has only one hidden layer. So, and the next layer is an output layer with one neuron. Kernel initializer is again normal, and activation function is sigmoid. See, in this I'm not using softmax. Can anyone tell me why I'm not using softmax? Instead I am using sigmoid function. Let me see how many people are awake.
Softmax, the sum of column should be 1.
Sum of column should be 1, exactly, and there is only one neuron. There is no point having sum of all of them. I think people are awake. Some of you are awake at least.
Classification is
Yes. True. Very true. Okay, so I'm using sigmoid function. Model.compile, again I'll compile with binary cross entropy. The optimizer is Adam and matrix is accuracy, as I've been doing for past 4 or 5 programs. Now it is time to evaluate this model using stratified cross validation in the scikit-learn framework. We pass the number of training epochs to Keras classifier, and then verbose is set to also turned off, given that the model will be created 10 times for 10-fold cross validation being performed. Let me do it one for once. Let's switch it on and see, because I'm ultimately going to run it. So let me see how much text it has to display, how much output it does. So I'm just going to run it. And in this, if I read it, estimator Keras classifier returns an estimator, which will call the function create baseline, and create baseline is this function, right? This function which we are running. Epochs are 10 epochs and batch size 5, verbose equal to 1. I have made it 1 because I want to see how much data it is actually presenting to me. K-fold, it will do 10-fold splits, 10 cross validation, and then results will be stored over here after cross val scores, and the baseline, and this will be my output, final output. Let's see. So it is verbose, so it will be producing so many different outputs. It's not that slow. K-fold cross-validation is beneficial all the time, except when you don't really have the um, capability or capacity to perform it. Like your model is too big, it is taking 2 or 3 days to run, and then you perform k-fold cross validation, then you can imagine how much time it is going to take. But if you can wait, there is no harm in showing the k-fold cross validation accuracy, or probably all the values of different 10 different models in the paper. You see, research papers get published if they have enough detail, enough information, have enough data. So more data you put up in your research paper, the better that will be. So if you perform, can we generate a synthetic data? Synthetic data, this question has two answers. I mean, I take this question in two ways, because anyone can get two different meanings of your question. Synthetic data is the data that we call as something that has been cooked up. Okay. Normally, when we say synthetic data, that means data does not exist. You have cooked up the data to fit your result. So that is cooked up data. We should not go for cooked up data. Otherwise, synthetic data means data that you have not actually obtained. However, you still want to increase the data. That is called data augmentation, and that I'll show you. That is also synthetic data. Okay, so I think I'm able to answer your question. Maybe from running a code in MATLAB. MATLAB is something that I will warn you against. Okay, I have a very bad feeling about MATLAB. I don't know how many of you are non-computer science people in this group of 137 participants, but I would request all the computer scientists to leave MATLAB for non-computer scientist people, because for computer science people, the algorithm is more important. Okay, the way you program the way you write your program, the way you create your model is more important than the result. For other people, result is more important than the way the programs are created. Okay, so for anybody doing computer science research, they have to do this computational complexity analysis also, and how you improve the performance of your program. MATLABs are already very heavy software. Okay, and for those people who don't want to dive deep into how this is created, how model is created, MATLAB is fine. Okay, they create a black box of nnet function, and then anybody can work on that. But for computer science people, I would request you to shy away from. Just 1 second. एक्चुअली मैं वर्कशॉप में ही हूँ अभी। आप एक बार तिवारी सर को फोन कीजिए। तिवारी, आपको मेरा नंबर हरीश हरीश जी से विवेक तिवारी का नंबर लीजिए, डॉक्टर विवेक तिवारी, वो बता देंगे। I'm really sorry, somebody was calling me several times, so I had to pick it. Okay. Now it is run. Now I have a baseline. Baseline gives me 80% accuracy, mean 80% accuracy. Standard deviation is very much. So you can see I had only one hidden layer. So definitely the standard deviation had to be like this. But I have a baseline accuracy. With the very simplistic model also, if I was able to get 80% accuracy, then your better model, the model in which you have devoted some time, should give better performance. Now, to improve performance with data preparation, okay, now I'll just read through. It is a good practice to prepare your data before modeling. Neural network models are especially suitable to having consistent input values, both in scale and distribution. An effective data preparation scheme for tabular data when building neural network model is standardization. This is where this data is rescaled such that mean value for each attribute is 0 and the standard deviation is 1. Okay. This preserves Gaussian and Gaussian-like distributions while normalizing the central tendencies of each attribute. we can use, I would to understand the basic concept of what I'm trying to explain in this paragraph, I would request you to refer to a statistics course or a statistics article in which it talks about standardizing the data set, standardizing the data, input data, because at that time they will thoroughly explain why Gaussian distribution, why normal distribution, why central tendencies should be like this, why the mean value should be 0 and standard deviation one should be 1. These things they will explain in more detail, but over here I'm just following that um, tradition of standardizing our data set. We can use scikit-learn to perform the standardization of our sonar dataset using the standard scalar class. Rather than performing the standardization on the entire dataset, it is good practice to perform the standardization procedure on the training data within the pass of a cross validation run. Okay, and then use the trained standardization instance to prepare the unseen test fold. This makes standardization a step in model preparation in the cross-validation process, and it prevents the algorithm having knowledge of unseen data during evaluation. So you see what it is doing, it is standardizing that fold. So if it is doing k fold cross-validation, for one fold it is taking up the training data, standardizing it, and then training, and then using that data, using that training to test the validation samples. Okay. We can achieve this in scikit-learn using pipeline class. The pipeline is a wrapper that executes one or more models within a pass of cross-validation procedure. Here we can define a pipeline with the standard scalar followed by our neural network model. So in this example, I have done all these imports except this standard scalar. Rest of the things I have already imported in the previous program, till the previous program. This part is done, this part is known to you, this part is known to you. I have mounted my drive, so I think it is the, whether the this is correct or not. Let me just copy the correct path. Okay, my drive, then I go over here. So for anyone, if you are willing to see how I'm doing it, you see I'm again showing to you. I have this path. I want this file to be read, CSV file to be read. So I go to this icon, I click mount drive. It will mount your Google Drive for you, and when it mounts, it will show this drive icon to you. Okay, this drive icon will be shown to you. Just click on this drive icon, go to my drive. I mean, then after that, it will be your folder where you have stored your data. For me, it is DL class number 5. I will take this sonar and I will right click and I will copy the path. Okay, I copy the path. When I copy the path, I have the path. I will just copy it here, copy it here. Now this is the path of my file on my sonar.csv file on my Google Drive, right? Then data set, data frame. This is the split I am doing in the previous program. Also, I encoded the labels into 0 and 1. Then I created a baseline using this function. Rest of the things are same, I think. Yes, only one layer and one output layer. Now evaluate baseline model with the standardized data set. The only thing I'm changing over here is the standardization of the data set. I created an estimator list. Estimator list will have a standardized standard scalar, and I append MLP Keras classifier. Keras classifier function will take all these values, build function, which will be building my model, the number of epochs, batch sizes, and verbose equal to 0. And you see estimators will, this estimator will append, these values will be appended to the estimator list every time. Okay. So, and pipeline, it will pass take the estimator and it will standardize the data and run the whole process in sequence. Run the whole process in sequence. It will, this pipeline is actually passed to cross-value score. Here So this pipeline is actually a sequence of things that you have to perform one after another. Like estimators are appended with data set, standard scalar function is called over here. Can we use normalization than standardization? Yeah. And normalization, actually it is happening in the, if we are doing it, we are doing the normalization only. The standardization is the normalization that is happening over here. So this pipeline is actually a kind of in like in Unix. Unix, you might have seen that we pipeline the functions that we have to execute. This is doing the same thing. A lot of different things are put in a pipeline, and when I run this cross value score and I provided pipeline, it is performing all of them in a sequence such that finally I have the result. So let me run this program. I would also encourage you to look at these functions, and then if you put your mouse over this function like the pipeline function, you will see some of the details that are there. So I would seriously encourage you to look in those functions and then see different uses of those functions as well. Okay, because not everything could be explained over here. I'm just talking about the methodologies we implement, and these are the way we implement baseline standardization of data, and then finally next I'm going to tell you how to tune layers. So this is my accuracy. Okay, now new accuracy. You see the new accuracy, the with the standardized data set is 83.62. And what was the previous one? Previous one, the baseline was 80.74. So I have definitely gotten a better result than the baseline just by standardizing our data set only. I have not even touched or tuned my model. So I'm going to work on normalization user speed button. Yes, true. Actually, with the normalization, it will keep it between 0 and 1, and then it will the mean and standard deviation are also adjusted in the normalization. There are different ways to normalize. In fact, when we normalize, we set it as keep it between 0 to 1, and its mean and standard deviation should be like 0, mean should be 0 and deviation, standard deviation should be 1. So when we normalize, of course the distance difference between two words are very truly given by you, but when we normalize this thing, we obviously do so. So understand, I hope you understand. So tuning layer and neurons in the model. There are many things to tune on a neural network, such as weight initialization, activation function, optimization procedure, and so on, that we have the parameters that we have seen earlier. Okay. So one aspect that may have an outsized effect is the structure of network itself, called the network topology. In this section, we take a look at two experiments on the structure of network, making it smaller and making it larger. These are good experiments to perform when tuning a neural network on your platform. So here I'm going to perform evaluate a smaller network with the standardized data. So a smaller network means this network, and I think it is the same program. Let me run it and see. It's the same program, just the previous one. Okay, it has reduced the number of neurons. In the previous program, the number of neurons was 60. Okay, here it is taking a new 80 point improving. Yeah, it might improve, not an issue. See, when you run, okay, one thing I have to tell you here, when you run your model again and again, what you are doing is your model is all, if you will in Jupyter notebook, you will find a variable instance. So model instance has already been created, and that model instance is somehow training itself. Okay. So if you perform run those code again, it might sometimes it might happen that the new model is not created, the old model instance is being used. So you have to be very careful about that. Right. So Why am I annotating? Right. So this is
Another question that
yes,
creates
please.
get created many times. The thing you said. So in such cases, what should be done? Should we delete the already model created and should we run again?
No. I'm not saying you should delete. You should check if the same model instance is being used or a new model instance is being created. Okay. You
Sometimes the
see that
same model is being used.
sometimes these models are used, then you have to refresh your, I mean, you have to re-instantiate the whole program such that your all the variables are cleared, the buffer is cleared.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So with the reduced number of neurons in the first hidden layer, I am getting a smaller accuracy of 82.64%. But when I move from 60 to 30, I got now my network topology has how many neurons? 60 neurons. And I think in the previous one also, the baseline that I had created over here, yes, I had 60 neurons. So 60 neurons, and now again I'm going to have 60 neurons. Let me put 120 neurons. What is the benefit of looking at 60 neurons only? So let me run with 120 neurons and let's see what is the result. Okay, I'm again pasting the link to all the session attendance form of all the sessions. I would request all of you to fill this form. If you have already filled in, that is okay. But if you have not, then you please fill in this form. Right. So I've got 85.52% accuracy with 120 neurons, and you see I had the baseline was giving me 80%, then standardization of data gave me 83.62%. Then with 30 neuron model, I got 82%, and then with 120 neuron, I got 85.52% accuracy. So it means accuracy is increasing. At least with the baseline, my model, better models are giving better accuracies. This way, you can tune all the parameters, and you can even perform the previous example in which I had the executed the grid search to look for the best set of hyperparameter. You can run this program also using that code and see which set of parameter is most suitable and giving you the best result, right? So now I have shown you all the ways to start and to execute, to analyze machine learning algorithms. So till now I was only discussing machine learning. I was not discussing neural network, because neural network is what I had created a very small trivial kind of toy example. Now I'm going to talk about convolutional neural networks. Okay. So I'll close all of these examples and I hope you understood it. If there is any doubt, you can read through all the examples that I have shared with you. And then still if the doubt persists, right, so I'll close all the done. Okay, for Dr. Nasira, 30 neuron is giving 86% accuracy. Very good, ma'am. That's very encouraging. So, see, so now I'm going to move on to CNN, right? So CNN, we have already seen all the theory that was required to discuss the program. Now I'm moving on to this program, and I will. For this, I think I will tell you which file I'm using. You have a CNN folder in your Colab codes. Okay, just open that folder, and in that you will find there are 3 programs. These 3 programs I have to discuss in the remaining day, because today it's Thursday, right? And tomorrow we have end of session, in which first lecture will be taken by Professor Shekhar Verma and second by Dr. KP Singh, and we will end the session. So today I have discussed these 3 programs, and through these 3 programs I'll be able to demonstrate how to handle images through CNN. So I have started with this 4A MNIST IIINB. This is the program that I'm going to refer. There is a question, just by fine tuning the hyperparameter, can we publish the paper? No, that is not right. Fine tuning the parameter just explains what was your method of converging onto a good solution. Okay, you will have to compare your results with the existing state of art algorithms as well, then only you show. So the result and discussion part has normally 2 sections. One section is in the section in which you explain how you came up with this algorithm, what was the step, what were the procedure followed, what was the parameter tuning you followed. So you'll have to explain each and everything. How did you come up, how did you converge to this set of hyperparameter, right? That you have to explain. That is your work explanation. Then you compare your results with the existing state of the art, and then second section, in that section you explain why your algorithm is performing better, or how your algorithm is performing better than the existing state of art. So if these 2 things are there and your algorithm is performing better than your paper will be published, no issues. Again, answer this question. Answer of this question, what is transfer learning, will be answered tomorrow in the second session at 12 o'clock. Right. So I'm going to instantiate a small connet, and for this connet I have imported a few of the things, like from Keras import layers and models. First we should import model. Traditionally I've been doing it, so I'll do it again. Import models and import layers. Okay, these are the 2 things which constitute a network. From models.sequential. Okay, and sequential is the instance I want to create. So my model is sequential. I'll add the first layer. First layer is convolutional layer. What range is considered fine for standard deviation? As small as possible. Which file we are referring now? Please convey again. I am referring to the CNN folder, ma'am. I am referring to the DL4A MNIST. Okay, in the CNN folder you will find this folder program 4A MNIST IIINB. So in this I'm going to create a CNN with 1 conv layer, 1 max pool, 1 conv layer, 1 max pool, 1 conv layer. So I'll have 3 conv layer, excuse me, separated by pooling layers. To create a convolution layer, I'm doing con2D. There are other methods also in which convolutional 3D convolution is course that is beyond the syllabus of this FDP. That requires more introduction to how it is working. So we'll be working on 2D only, and 32 neurons, number of neurons, 3 and 3. This specified the first 3 specifies the size of your filter. Okay, second 3 specifies the step size how big a step, how big the stride is. Then activation function, what activation function you are taking, you can take ReLU. Input shape, since this is the first hidden layer, I need to specify the input shape. My input shape is 28 by 28 by 1. And remember this thing, the images that are coming to you, the MNIST images that we will be using in this are 28 pixel by 28 pixel, and they are grayscale, so they have only one channel. That is why it is 28 by 28 by 1. Okay. Now you would remember that while explaining the theory of conv layer, I had said that we express our the structure of our network by specifying conv layer and then activation layer. You see, however, when we create, the activation function is specified here in this call to layers itself. Okay, so you understand that activation is nothing different, it is part of that layer only. Now after adding the first conv layer, I am adding the max pool layer, and max pool also this two defines the size of that cell. Okay, and this two
Sir,
decides
can you
the
please explain one more time conv 2D parameters? 32,
2D
3.
parameters. Yeah, the first parameter is number of neurons. Okay, in that layer.
Okay.
Second, this bracket, the parenthesis has got two values, 3,3. The first three it tells you how big is the receptive field size or the filter size. Okay, so filter size will be 3 pixel. The size of that is square. So 3 means 3 pixel by 3 pixel is the size of that receptive field, and this 3 is the stride. When you slide your filter, how many pixels are you going to jump? So I will jump 3 pixels. This is a stride.
Okay.
Then activation function and input shape are clear, I suppose. Huh?
Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, welcome. So this 2 specifies the size of that square, the square out of which I'll be taking the maximum value. So 2 pixel by 2 pixel, it says me out of 4 pixel, I'll pick one value. And 2 means after I am done with these 4 cells, I'll jump 2 pixels on the right hand side. 64. Okay, wait a second. Okay, I mistakenly told you that this is number of neuron. This is number of filters actually. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I had that. 32 is the number of filters. I was talking in terms of dense layer. 32 is the number of filters. Okay. So in the first hidden layer, I have 32 filters. How many neurons? It will automatically be decided by what is the input size and what is your receptive field size. So as the receptive filter is sliding over the input, it is moving from left to right and top to bottom. So it will automatically tell you how many neurons are required in the hidden layer. This 32 specifies the number of filters.
Fine.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So second conv layer will have 64 filters, and then same thing, 3 by 3 of size of filter, and this 3 the stride. Activation function is again ReLU. Then third this is max pool layer, and then we have third conv layer having 64 filters again. Okay, so this is the structure of my network. A connet takes as input a tensor of shape, height, width, and channels, and not included the batch dimension. We don't specify the batch dimension over here. In this case, we will configure the connet to process input of size 28 by 28 by 1, which is the format of MNIST images. We'll do this by passing the argument input shape 28 28 1 to the first layer. And if I try to see the model summary, my model would look like this. I have all the layered and types, output, shape, and the parameters. So the output of first layer will have a shape of 26 by 26 by 32 because 32 is the depth. I'm taking 32 filters over here, so depth of the hidden layer output of the hidden layer decides the how number of decided by the number of filter. So first conv layer 32 filters in this layer. So this output becomes the input for next layer. Okay. So next conv layer will have an input of depth 32. However, the output depth is 64. Okay. And max pool does not change the output depth. It does not change the output depth. It just down samples. So instead of 26 by 26, I have 13 by 13 size input now. And see, there are no parameters associated. All there are no edges. There are no weight values associated with the edges. Is there a question? Dr. Srijasti, are you asking something? Then why are you pasting this much text over here? Yes, it is also considering the bias in it. Right. So I'll move on. So you can see that the output of every con 2D and max pooling 2D, the width and height dimension tend to shrink as you go deeper in the network. The number of channels is controlled by first argument passed to the con 2D. Okay, 32 or 64. These are the number of filters. The next step is to feed the last output tensor of shape 3364 into a densely connected classifier network like those you are already familiar with, a stack of dense layer. These classifiers process vectors which are one-dimensional. What is non-trainable parameter? There is no non-trainable parameter. All these parameters are the parameter which are being trained. That is why you see max pooling shows no parameter over here, because the edges over here do not carry weights. These max pooling layer is just introduced to downsample the data. Why padding is taken into account? Here I'm not padding is introduced if you want the output to be of the same size, the output padding, because you don't want to reduce the size of input. So over there you can have padding, but here I'm not using any padding. I mean, padding is not taken into account because ultimately you are downsampling. So if padding happens, then if you want padding to happen, then you can use it. And why padding is taken into account? Padding, I don't think I'm doing any padding. Okay. So next step is to feed the last output tensor of shape 3364 into a densely connected classifier network like those you are already familiar with, a stack of dense layer. For that, in dense layers take a vector. Okay, and this is not a vector, it's a matrix, three-dimensional matrix. So we have to flatten it. These classifiers process vectors which are one-dimensional, whereas the current output is a 3D tensor. So first we have to flatten the 3D output to a 1D output and then add few dense layer on top of it. So what I have done till now, I have created 3 conv layer. You see, this is the structure. I have 1, 2, 3 conv layers and 2 max pool layer in between. So the final output is 3364. 3364 is a 3D tensor. I have to convert it to 1D tensor. For that, what I do, I will just add a flattening layer. Okay, so model dot add layers dot flatten. This layer, the job of this layer is to take the input, whatever type of input is coming, whatever type of tensor is given to it, and it will flatten, it will create a 1D vector. After creating the 1D vector, that 1D vector will be passed on to this dense layer. So with now this will have 64 neurons. Now this is 64 neurons, okay? And then this dense layer, the second dense layer, which will act as an output layer, will have 10 output neurons. And then activation function over here is softmax, and the activation function for this dense layer is ReLU. If you want, you can introduce a dropout layer between two dense layers, but right now I'm not introducing dropouts. We'll do a 10-way classification using final layer with 10 output and softmax function. Now, if I want to see the summary of this, my whole network looks like this. I have con, pool, flatten, dense, dense. Okay, flattening is introduced because I want to convert 3D tensor to a 2D tensor, and because dense layers can only accept 2D 3D tensor to 1D tensor, because it can accept 1D tensor only. Now, as you can see, 3364 outputs are flattened into vector of shape 576 before going through two dense layer. Now let's train this one. So where from I need to start? I need to start from here. I'll do this. It's connecting. For this, I have not provided you any data set, so it will import the data set. This is my model summary. When I'm going to import the dataset, this is the code to import dataset, and after importing, I'm from Keras dataset. Keras provides you MNIST automatically, so I will import it, and then using two categorical, I will convert load. I'll convert it to. So first I'm loading it. So let me load it. After loading MNIST.load data, it will be loaded into train images labels and test images labels. Okay, it's done. Okay, so if I want to see the shape of it, it is train images.shape. It has got 60,000 samples of size 28 by 28. Okay, this is train images. See, there are no labels in it. Now I need to convert it to a new shape. New shape means 60,000 is the number of samples. Then 28 is the height, width, and number of channels. You see, remember when I told you while handling image data, we handle it as first axis always refers to number of samples. Second and third axis refers to height and width. And fourth axis, the second, third axis refers to height and width, and fourth axis refers to number of channels. If you want, you can reverse it, number of channel first and then height and width. But here I'm going with the traditional default approach. After converting it, after reshaping it, I have normalize it. Here I'm using the term normalization because somebody had an objection. Difference between normalization and standard. This is pure normalization. I'm just dividing the value by 255, indicating now that the max 255 is the maximum value. So it will be, all the values will be between 0 to 1. So at this I am converting. So it is not standardization, it is just normalization. Okay. So I convert them to float 32 and then reshape the test images as well in the same way. 10,000 samples for testing, 28 by 28 by 1, and convert them to float value, and I have normalized them. After that, I have train labels. Two categorical train labels means all the categories have been converted to the train labels have been categorized. Test labels have been categorized after using categories. Okay. And then my model has optimizer as RMS prop. Instead of Adam, here I'm using RMS prop. You can use Adam also. I'm dividing by 255 because it is a grayscale value. So the image is grayscale. So every pixel will have a value between 0 and 255 only. Okay. So if I divide that value by 255, I'm normalizing all the values to fall between 0 and 1. Means if the value is 0 and I divide it by 255, it will be 0. If the value is 255, if I divide it by 255, the value will be 1. So remaining values will fall between 0 and 1. Again, type float, explain again as type float. As type float, ma'am, is just converting it to floating number. Okay, when it reads it, the value will be treated as integer. All the values are integer because they are integer numbers. And when I convert it to float, I will be able to, after doing all the, I will have more accuracy to get the value. Okay, so I'll convert it to float. And another thing, if it is integer and I divide by 255, it might happen that the value will become 0 because the fractional part is not taken. So I'll convert it to float and then divide by 255 so that fractional value between 0 and 1 is accepted. Then I have to compile. After at compilation, I provided RMS prop as the now I'm using this optimizer for the first time. Loss is again categorical cross entropy. And instead of binary cross entropy, you see again I'm using categorical cross entropy. At the time of iris classification I had used, I'm using it again here. Matrix is accuracy. So I'm going to run it and see what is happening. Nothing, no output. My model has been compiled and now I fit my model. Fit means training. Epoch 1 only, I'll give it 1 epoch only just to see what is happening.
.9262, sir. Accuracy.
Accuracy 9262. Very good. Very good. That's
0.92,
a
sir.
good accuracy, I suppose. 0.92, yeah, 0.92 is the, if you multiply with 100, it is 92% actually. Okay. Chandmani Sharma says by default, 1/ gives a float value and double slashes give an integer division. Thanks, I appreciate. So this accuracy is 97.77. Okay, 97.77%. So now this is what I have got over here. It has just fit. I think what is the accuracy? Let me evaluate it. Mine accuracy is 83.49%. Right. So this is a simple connet that I have created. Now I'm going to show you. Okay. What is the difference between fit and evaluate? Okay, fitting is training. When I'm fitting it, I'm actually training it, and evaluation is testing. I'm evaluating means I'm testing on some samples and then I'm telling you what is the accuracy of the trained model. While I'm fitting it, I'm doing training only. Right. So this is a small connet. I'll take a break now. And when we meet in the next session, I will discuss 2 more examples in which fit generator. Where did you see fit generator? Fit generator is in the next program. Okay, I'll discuss fit generator in the next program. That fit generator actually takes a batch of samples and then pass it on to the fit function for it to train. We will start at 3 and okay, I have already got lesser number of people and so I have only 118 participants at the moment and everybody I suppose has got the attendance sheet, right? Because I'm going to now I'm going to close the session 10 attendance, right? I'll close session 10 attendance and you have session 11 attendance, and after half an hour I'll close that session as well, so that you can everyone can fill the attendance. Thanks a lot. I will be ending the session now. We'll meet at 3. Okay.
We will take the attendance, sir. Then you can close the. Not taken the attendance, sir. Thank you, sir.
I mean, a link is there with you, right?
Yeah, we'll take it, sir. Just searching
Okay.
for it.
I have a question to ask. Just one question. When I end the session, do you still see the text, or the text is gone? All the text chats are
Text is
gone.
going off, sir. That's the problem, sir.
Okay.
The chat bot is going off. Entirely it is going off, sir. That's the problem we are facing.
Okay, so I will paste all the links in the WhatsApp group.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.